All right, everyone, welcome back to video 3 of what I think is probably going to be 4 for this week. And now we're going to move on to thinking about planning activities that promote engagement, uh, large and small group time being included in that. So, as we talked about, one of the keys to preventing challenging behaviors is to ensure that children are engaged with activities, with peers, and adults. We've already talked about how to build relationships. That was last week with children on an individual basis. Adults should also plan activities in ways that will promote engagement, similar to that. So there are two keys to this. The first is using both small and large group activities. And number two is ensuring that activities are designed and adapted so that all of the children in the classroom can participate in a meaningful way. So one of the common problems that teachers have is challenging behaviors during large group activities. I know I have. Ugh, so frustrating. I totally get it. It's difficult to keep all children interested throughout an entire circle time. Okay, but here are some suggestions about how you can increase the likelihood of engaging all of the children that are there. And the first step is really about planning the activity. So first, consider the length of time that you need for circle time relative to the children's age and abilities and to the types of activities that will occur during that large group time. So if you're teaching a group of 3-year-olds and you're keeping them at circle time for 45 minutes, folks, I've got to tell you, not developmentally appropriate. So go back and reevaluate the age, the attention span, and the engagement and interest in the activities that are happening when you're determining how long you're asking children to be there during circle time. So also have a purpose and be clear about what it is that you want children to do or learn during this time. Don't do exactly the same thing every day. So for example, you can teach concepts during large group in so many different ways. Be creative, use puppets and role plays and stories and songs and visual aids and discussion and movements and dot 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 dot, right? Vary these activities from day to day. You might also do repeated readings of the same story for several days. I get that, but use different strategies like puppets on the first day, a flannel board on the second day, or have children role play the story on the third day. And don't just do circle time to do circle. Use it as a time to teach new concepts, right? So this is an especially good time to teach social skills and to support children's emotional development. Okay, second is the implementation of the activity. So make sure all children have opportunities to be involved. So, everyone holds a character from the story, or children all do things with partners next to them. So maybe you're assigning jobs for children who have a particularly difficult time during circle. Maybe they sit next to you and they're the book holder or they're the page turner. Just one strategy for keeping them engaged and reducing the likelihood of a challenging behavior. Vary the way you talk and the intonation of your voice. If you're probably as monotonous as I am right now, they're going to tune you out pretty fast. So you want the high and the low and the fast and the slow. Have children help you lead activities. And then finally, pay attention to children's appropriate behavior as well as the function of their behavior. So remember that if they're wiggling and they're wandering away, it's because the activity is probably not very interesting to them. All right, let's take a look at this circle time setup before the children arrive. Feel free to pause the video and think about, oh my gosh, what can this teacher do to improve this area before children arrive for circle time? All right, so as a group, here's some additional ideas for how a circle area might be improved. You might include cues for where children are going to sit. You might have poster boards for each activity of group time. You may incorporate props and materials into your circle time, or you might even have name cards or some type of a job system for picking children or for children for picking different jobs or ways to assist or lead during that circle time. And this one is just a quick slide to illustrate the use of an easel that one teacher uses to to show or showcase the activities that are going to occur today in that large group circle time meeting. So let's think a bit about the importance of using small group activities, both in terms of giving, more individualized time to children and also as an opportunity for skill building. How do you implement small group activities effectively, right? So first, you want to be clear about the purpose and the outcomes of the activity that you're doing. So what is it that you want children to learn? And are you structuring the activity so that it meets the needs of all of the children that are going to be involved here? Although small group activities are very often a little more teacher directed, they don't have to be didactic, right? So they don't have they can involve games and stories and discussion and projects, and it doesn't always have to be the teacher imparting information and wisdom. It can be and should be interactive. Small groups also provide a great opportunity to use peers or friends as models. So, one peer can model a skill or behavior that you're trying to teach to other children. It's also important to ensure that all children participate in a way that's meaningful and relevant to their goals, needs, and developmental level. And then provide descriptive feedback. And you remember from last week, descriptive feedback related to their appropriate behavior to the children throughout the course of the activity that you are implementing. All right, so giving directions and also teaching classroom rules. Research has shown that preschool children have high rates of not following teacher directions. That's really no surprise, gang. While this might be because of the child's developmental characteristics, some of it, stay with me here, some of it might be because of the way that we as teachers are giving those directions, right? So directions that are stated negatively, like, why haven't you put up the toys? Or directions that are stated as questions, like, can you help me put up the toys? They might confuse children or even make them less likely to follow the directions that we're giving them. So, here's some strategies that can be used to increase the likelihood that children will follow the directions that you are giving them, right? So, first, make sure that you have the child's attention before you give the direction. So, many times, the child may not even hear what you're saying or realize that the direction is being given to them. So you can begin a direction to the whole class by saying, I need everyone to listen. Or the teacher can begin a direction to an individual child by maybe tapping them lightly on the shoulder or saying their name. So next, minimize the number of directions that you give to children. So again, going back to research shows that teachers give a really high number of directions to children, many of which they don't follow through on. So it's important to give only directions that you want a child to comply with and give directions in a positive way that tells a child specifically what to do and give them time to respond, to the first direction before you layer on another direction, especially with younger children. It's important to follow through if a child doesn't follow that initial direction. All right, so individualize the way that the directions are given also. Some children may respond well to verbal directions, but other children might need more physical prompting or pictorial prompting in order to follow directions. And giving clear directions. So tell the child exactly what you want him or her to do. Avoid vague directions like be careful and settle down. These directions could be substituted with hold on to the railing or sit quietly. Those are much more specific and informative for children, and much more likely to get your desired response. All right. Also, give children the opportunity to respond to directions, right? So avoid giving multiple directions at once without giving the child a chance to respond and without acknowledging the child for responding. And when appropriate, give the child choices and options for following directions. So sometimes I found that it's important that children follow a direction in a really specific way. But other times it's okay to give them some options about how they choose to go about it. So, for example, like during a transition time, the teacher might say, you need to sit quietly. You can get either a book or you can draw a picture. So, there we're giving them some choice about how they're going to follow that direction, and then following through with positive acknowledgement of children's behavior. So it's important that children understand when they are following directions and we are pointing that out to them. When we think about teaching classroom expectations and rules, one of the things that we need to distinguish um, one of the things that we have to distinguish is the difference between our expectations and our rules. So expectations are really their general ways that you want people to act and typically apply to children and adults in pretty much all settings, right? So examples of expectations are listed here on the slides. Be respectful and be safe and be a team player and be peaceful and et cetera, et cetera. All of these are expectations that we have, not just for children, but for adults in our classrooms as well. So I like this slide. In this slide, you're going to see a program-wide expectations that were adopted by one early childhood center in the area. And they've posted their expectations on the wall at the entrance to this school. When children engage in the expectation, one of the things that they do is they take a photo and then post that photo. And by doing this, families also become aware of the expectations of the school, which I think is great. And each month, those photos go home, and teachers begin again with posting new photos the next month. Classroom rules are linked to expectations, but they're stated in a way that are understandable by children and then state a behavior that is actually desired, right? So rules clarify the expectations and are often setting specific, right? So there's sometimes we have with playground rules that are possibly different from center rules that might be different from circle time rules. And here are some examples of rules, things like keeping your hands and your feet to yourself and walking with your group and listening for teacher directions and using nice words. And notice these are things that we want children to do, not things like don't run, don't wander away from the group. We're using some positive wording choices here. Preschool settings need to have a few simple rules. If it's possible, involve children in the development of these rules. Post the rules visually, just like the schedule. Use visual rules. Teach the rules systematically. Circle time, large group times. These are great opportunities to teach these rules and then provide positive feedback when you catch children following the rules. Children can be involved in generating classroom rules in your classroom. It'll be important that you're reinforcing these at high rates, or at least the behaviors that you want to see, you're reinforcing at high rates so that children have an idea of what the classroom expectations are. That's going to help them to come up with these classroom rules and be a part of the decision-making process about what the classroom rules should be. Children can help decide what visuals to put on posters around the room to help remind themselves of these classroom rules. So ask that question of children when you're making rules together. What picture should we use to remind all of our friends what we're going to follow, and then maybe even let children decorate those rules posters. It's a great way to keep them involved in the process of developing the classroom rules. It's important when you have rules that you're teaching the rules. So far too often I see teachers that don't actively teach the rules or remind children of the rules in a way that can prevent challenging behaviors. They just assume that because we talked about the rules at the beginning of the school year, everyone should automatically remember them and follow them. And that's not how children's brains work, right? We know this. We know this. Here are a few examples of class time rules. These rules have visuals that are removable. So the teacher can take a rule card to a child if a child needs to be reminded of a particular rule. Here are some examples of school-wide playground rules. These are posted on all playgrounds throughout this particular early education program. And again, notice that we have a mixture of words and line drawings. This is probably going to be most appropriate for children that are 4 and 5 years old, a little older. Here are some outside rules with pictures to illustrate the rules. Things like we let all bugs and animals live, and we use gentle words and hands, and we have pictures that match those words on the left. Here's a visual example of some library center rules that we want children to follow, and notice there are accompanying photos to go along with those as well. Here's an example of some music and movement rules for one classroom. This is a poster that I've seen posted in a few preschool classrooms. And then here's an example of portable rules. So this illustrates a rule sign that one teacher uses outside or takes with her on field trips. So it has a stop sign that can be really helpful for maybe lining up, or interrupting a challenging behavior that's happening or about to happen. On the other side are some rules that are removable, and then they can be used as a prompt for a child. Sometimes teachers use the loss of activities or rewards to motivate the class, and while this might be a strategy useful for older children in kindergarten or older, it's not really an appropriate approach for young children. And this slide explains how some of those systems might be reframed. And then finally, this last slide here provides an idea for how you might partner with some of the families in your classroom and help them really teach children various rules at home as well. And so we're going to pause here and then come back for our fourth and final video for this week.